Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. I'd like to use this coconut from my garden to illustrate and explain where a flat earther is coming from when he is able to disassociate from what seems to be mathematics that works to prove we are on a spinning ball Earth and we are whizzing around a sun. When someone starts looking into the way things work and we hear that we can tell, for example, how dense this coconut is, or how far away or how big it is, just by looking, we understand that mathematical equations can be used to prove a point. We can say it is a certain size, a certain volume, and a certain density, therefore having a certain mass contained in this specific volume. And we can, talk about it being close or far away and its apparent size. I've got something else about the same size, a ball full of air. So they're very different. And if we have never touched or seen inside these things, or we've never bounced a ball or dropped a coconut, then we simply cannot know what's inside them. The only way you can do that is to open them up, to physically cut the coconut open and find out it's made up of meat and coconut water, and this one's full of air. So it's easy to understand that, yes, you can create a mathematical model based on when objects might appear to pass each other. And you can assume sizes and distances and speeds to give you some kind of illustration of the passage of time. And then you can create mathematical formula based on aspects of science, such as imagining that there is some kind of inverse square law attached to this coconut. Yes, maybe it does have energy emanating from it, but does it have a gravitational field because it is a certain density? Does this have a gravitational field because it is a certain density, or a certain density in a certain volume, therefore giving it a mass? Anyone looking into Flat Earth can understand this very simple concept that mathematics can be manipulated, a variety of conclusions can be arrived at by starting with certain assumptions of, first of all, the idea that mass on its own creates gravity. Second of all, that there is this known mass of these objects and they are at a known distance. This is something we can never, ever know. Yet, we can appear to prove it with the application of mathematics and assume calculations without actually measuring it. Then you look into things like the Eratosthenes experiment and the idea that shadows prove the sun is 93 million miles away. But anyone can see that you can do that with a lamp over a flat surface. So you understand that assumptions had to be made even if this chap was even real. So we have this mathematical model that tells us the sun is massive and the earth here is tiny. And because of the sun's massiveness, it has a gravitational pull based on the inverse square law, which has never been scientifically proven as a fact with objects of mass or density. Yes, with light, magnetism, we have a field outside of the physical object. And yes, there is an inverse square law. That's science. But that piece of science has been applied to this idea that the sun is massive and therefore pulls the earth around. Yeah? But the thing is, it's very, 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 very easy to understand that we don't know what the sun is. We don't know what it's made of, we don't know how it works, we don't know where it gets its energy from. We know the time it will pass by, and we can make an illustration of that using mathematics, using the 360 degrees of a circle, just like a clock, to talk about the passage of time. But there has been an attempt to prove that this human-made time construct, 24-hour idea, is a physical reality, when time is something we cannot touch or see, but we can illustrate the passage of time, usually using a clock, which is a circle. So the passage of time is recorded throughout the ages, and it's been known for millennia when certain celestial events will occur, eclipses, equinoxes, and all that. But it's never been scientifically proven what's moving. Yeah? Sure, we have earthbound physics, and we can say that things of a certain mass can accelerate at certain speeds, and they will have a certain effect, and they will travel certain distances that we can measure here on Earth. But up there in the sky, we don't know the physics of how it all works. If we did, we'd be able to recreate solar systems in a lab, just like we can create electricity, or we can create magnetism or frequencies and things like that. If it's science, we understand how it comes about, and we can make it or manipulate it. If we can't, yet we assume certain things, then that's done with mathematics, and it's an abstract concept. We have ideas like the Venus transit of the sun is proof of the heliocentric model. Again, we have no idea how close, how big, how dense these objects are, Venus and the sun. We just don't know, yet we can assume by making mathematical formula that eventually arrive at the conclusion we desire. So people are measuring the drop at the horizon with drones and things like that, and recording the sunset twice. All good, all good. But to assume that even if the mathematics fits, to assume that this is absolute proof of being on a spinning ball whizzing around a massive sun is very single-minded and not allowing oneself to take a step back and see how the very foundations of what we have been led to believe have never actually been proven, the nature and cause of gravity. The flat earther can see and understand that the mathematician has said that, okay, things drop at a certain rate, and we will say that gravity is caused by the mass of the ball Earth, so we will make the ball a certain size and density, therefore giving it a specific mass, which equates to the speed at which objects of mass come down to the Earth. Sure, we can measure that, but we cannot assume, and we certainly have not proven scientifically, that the density within a specific volume of the Earth we are standing on is what's responsible for the rate at which something will fall. It's just never been proven. We can calculate it, but we can't prove it. And then the flat earther, or anyone looking into flat Earth, sees that the sun does what everything else does as it goes off into the distance, and the stars and the moon. We see that over distance something will appear to drop to the horizon. It's a simple observation. So you already have the understanding that we don't really know how everything works. We have the understanding that an idea was conceived to have the Earth spinning around the sun. Understandable if we can look up and see, for example, Jupiter and moons going around Jupiter, and we can go on about orbital mechanics. So yes, understandable that we can look at these things and assume that Jupiter has a certain mass and it's pulling its moons around. But again, we don't know how far away it is, we don't know how large it really is. We can make assumptions and build models based on this idea to our heart's content. Yes, and we can then derive numbers that say Jupiter must be a certain density, you could float it in water if you could find a big enough body of water, etc., etc. We have all these little factoids based on assumptions. So there's this understanding that while science, real science, can prove and verify things here on Earth, mathematics can describe that science, but mathematics can be used on its own to invent and create a picture of a physical phenomenon. And again, nothing that's related to anything that we can actually observe and experience here on Earth. So even before ever looking into flat Earth many, many years ago, electric universe, that kind of thing was always something that interested me personally. And I remember thinking many, many years ago, if you have the idea that the sun is a certain mass and size, large enough to pull the Earth around, well, what if the sun is just plasma, or even if it's gas? How can you have enough gas or plasma to have enough mass, to have enough gravity to pull not only the Earth but all these other planets around. Yes, we can draw scale models that appear to work and appear to illustrate it. But the very simple fact at the root of the heliocentric model is an idea that isn't science. Yes, it's mathematics, it's timekeeping, it's predictable, not because of gravity, but because we know when certain objects will pass by. It's been known for thousands of years, without ever needing a globe. The globe is just an illustration of a 24-hour clock turning. It's just an illustration. That's all it is. Yeah? A three-dimensional clock. And as we know, a clock just is a representation of time. We run our lives by it. Got to be somewhere at 9 o'clock. It's amazing, really, that this is time is an artificial construct, yet it rules our lives. So it doesn't matter how much maths you throw at backing up the idea that we are on a spinning ball Earth whizzing round a massive blazing sun. It is understood by the flat earther that much of the globe model has just been engineered in an imaginary way. The maths has been created to prove itself. It's not real science. That is pseudoscience. Thank you very much.